Or when we talk about Israel, or the remnant of Israel in the present age, one of the passages of scripture we can look at is 1 Peter. Now, Peter is writing to Jews who are living in what he refers to as the dispersion. The Jews living outside of the land of Israel in some other countries where there are majority Gentile populations. Now, he specifically calls them the dispersion, although some translations might differ. But the dispersion or the diaspora is a technical term that always refers to Jews living outside of the land of Israel. So to try and take this letter and say, oh, he's writing to the church, and when Peter refers to Gentile, to try and interpret that as meaning unbelievers is an injustice to this letter. So Peter is writing to Jews living outside of the land, and when he talks about Gentiles, he means that in the true sense of the word, that it's a non-Jew. So we best not try and redefine terms to fit our interpretation. It's not a letter that's written to the church as a whole, although some of the things that Peter says are true of the church as a whole. This is not the proof text for those items. Those statements can be found elsewhere to prove those points. This is not the letter to take to try and justify certain things about the church, like the church being, or believers being priests. We can't take that text from here. So Peter is writing to these Jews specifically to encourage them, and he's highlighting this difference between perhaps what they've seen before and this transition that we see when Christ is on the scene. When Christ is revealed, there's been a transition in this composition of the remnant. So when we see, or when we talk about the remnant, it's always what God has revealed. The remnant is those who believe in what God has revealed. So in the Old Testament, before Christ comes on the scene, the remnant would have been composed of a certain set of individuals within the nation of Israel who believed what God had revealed up to that point. When Christ is revealed, people or individuals who don't accept that new truth are no longer part of the remnant. So Dr. Fruchtenbaum mentions this in his manuscript, and it picks up on some of the items that Peter mentions, identifying Christ as the stone of stumbling or a rock of offense. So that highlights this fact that this division, the thing that defines or demarcates the remnant from the non-remnant, is in this particular age is Christ. So people who don't accept him are part of the non-remnant. Those who do are part of the remnant. So that we're just talking about members of the nation of Israel here also. So for many of these, I think the individuals that Peter is writing to are new believers. He refers to them as being in need of spiritual milk. So he's highlighting for them this new responsibility that they have as the remnant. They are fulfilling the role that was defined or assigned by God to the nation of as a whole, the nation of Israel as a whole. And that's when he points out that they are this holy priesthood, that they're offering sacrifices on behalf of the nation, spiritual sacrifices. So this group of people is succeeding where the nation or the non-remnant is failing. So they've accepted Jesus. And he goes on to talk about them. And again, this highlights the fact that Peter is writing to Jews. He talks about them having put aside the vain ways of their forefathers, which is a specific kind of thing that makes sense when you look at rabbinic teaching and what, the beliefs that they used to hold and now have been put aside. So the Pharisaical rules, all of that kind of thing have been pointless. Putting those aside and adopting this Christ-centered life is what they've done. So that for these encouraging the people that they have done this right thing and their new responsibility. And in fact, in doing that now, not only are they a holy priesthood, they are also a royal priesthood. And he highlights that difference, that Christ is in this new order. The Aaronic priesthood had its span, but now there is a new type of priest in the order of Melchizedek. So again, Peter, he's highlighting this fact, encouraging them that drawing this contrast between the old and the old way of life, the new way of life, this non-remnant and the remnant, their responsibility, their role that they have to carry, the fact that Jesus as this stone is a stone of division, but also in that sense one that's rejected by the leadership, by the builders, and now is being built up with these new people into a new spiritual house. So they're being used and built into this new building. So there's this transition or contrast between the non-remnant and the remnant, encouraging them, defining this purpose that they have, encouraging them not to feel overwhelmed as perhaps they might have been, seeing those that they would have held in high esteem before, perhaps as being, highly religious and esteemed, now sort of figuratively, being cast aside. They're not in this favored position, not in the same position that these new believers find themselves in. So, so they are a royal nation, holy nation, a royal priesthood, and they are succeeding as the remnant where the nation or the non-remnant has failed, and they are fulfilling this calling that the nation had as a whole, this idea of being a holy nation and a priesthood. So that's a quick summary of 1 Peter.